Ladies and gentlemen, signori signori, it's a pleasure to welcome you to today's talk, the last of this series dedicated to the history of photography in Italy, held by Giovanni Aloi. Welcome, Giovanni, art historian and lecturer at the School of the Art Institute in Chicago and at the Sotheby's Institute of Art in New York and London. After last week's conversation with Marco Garofalo, we close today our program getting acquainted with the work of one of the most acclaimed Italian contemporary photographers, and I am honored to welcome Silvia Camporesi. Buonasera Silvia, benvenuta.
Buonasera. And
I would like to thank Silvia very much for accepting our invitation to share your experience and your take on photography with us, as well as for being so kind and patient, connecting from Italy, waiting till this late night hour to talk with us.
Thank you very much for this invitation.
Thank you. Silvia Camporesi uses the language of photography and video to build tales drawn from a mixture of myth, literature, religions, and reality. In recent years, in particular, her research has focused on the Italian landscape, especially with the project Atlas Italia, that was followed by a project commissioned by the Ministry of Culture that allowed Silvia to move freely during last April's pandemic lockdown in order to document that dramatic time. Since the year 2000, Silvia Camporesi has exhibited her work in a number of solo and group exhibitions all over the world and in the most prestigious museum, galleries, art venues, and photography contests, where her work has been awarded with numerous art prizes. Among the many, I would like to mention that Silvia has recently been selected as one of the 5 winners of the Cantica21 project in the section dedicated to the 700th anniversary of Dante Alighieri. Cantica21 is a project of the Ministry of Culture and of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs that supports the production of the artworks of the selected artists that then will be exhibited in the Italian cultural institutes, embassies, and consulates that are part of the project. And the Italian Cultural Institute in Chicago is among these, and we're very happy to be. And hopefully we will be able to host Silvia's project in our premises in the fall and continue on that occasion this conversation in person. So finally, before leaving the floor to Silvia and Giovanni, I encourage you as usual to take part to the conversation using the Q&A tab. And I remind you that we are live on Facebook and that this talk is being recorded and that will be soon available on our YouTube channel. So please, Giovanni, please, Silvia, the screen is all yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Luca. It's a great pleasure to bring this series to an end with a conversation with Silvia Camporesi, who's an incredibly important and interesting Italian contemporary photographer. Her body of work is outstanding, and we will see some of it together. We'll have the opportunity to discuss it with Silvia, which is a great privilege, but I do invite you to go online after this talk and take a look at Silvia's website in order to get a better sense of how many interesting topics Silvia has been addressing over the years. Without any further ado, we have a few important questions for Silvia. And I thought an interesting starting point for us today is the big question with contemporary photography that still haunts those who work with photography as an art form. While we can say that in the world of media, as in newspapers and the press, the transition from analog to digital happened a long time ago, and it happened in a very categorical, univocal way. Today, there's a more nuanced discourse around analog and digital. So I wanted to ask you, Silvia, where do you stand? Digital or analog? Why?
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you for this precious invitation. I'm very happy, and but I have preferred to be in Chicago physically, but it's okay. Okay, the question is very simple, and I can say absolutely digital, or better, I used analog photography in the past because when I started to take photos, there was only analog photography. And I used to print in black and white in the darkness. Sorry, in the dark room. And it was a very beautiful period because I used to spend a lot of time inside the dark room, and it was like to live in another dimension. And then when digital photography made its appearance around about 2000, 2000 and 2005, the first good cameras, I waited until the quality of digital photography was comparable to the quality of analog photography, because I used many different kind of camera, analog camera. And when the digital photography became very good, I changed my cameras and I bought the first digital camera. And I can say that now digital is absolutely perfect. So I don't see any reason to continue using analog photography, because it's very, you need a lot of time, you need a lot of money to print, develop, etc., etc. And the quality now is perfect, so you don't need to, for me to do this regression. But many, you know, now analog photography is used by many artists, like, as you told me, like a concept, like something to communicate with the past. But in my case, I prefer the digital photography because it's very quick and it's perfect for what I do.
Silvia, that is so interesting already. First of all, I wanted to mention how I agree with you. The darkroom is a magical place. And unfortunately, yeah. Digital has cut that out. I guess we might be roughly the same age. And I remember, you know, those our age have most likely started with photography that way, you know, with the analog experience, the merging into digital. And I can't recommend it enough to anyone who's listening. Now that the world is reopening, if you've never been in a darkroom and you feel inclined to try photography out, I still think it's a great experience in life. Yeah. Shake that tray and, you know, smell the chemicals in and just find yourself in that place of darkness with this emergence of magic. I think it's truly magical. But yes, of course, digital has changed everything. And I agree with you too that it's faster, it's more practical. It's also environmentally friendlier, right? Because all the chemicals used for the making of black and white or color analog photography is pretty dreadful. But let's play devil's advocate. If I asked you one thing that you are concerned with when it comes to digital, what would that be?
Sorry, one thing?
One thing that you might be concerned with, that you're not entirely happy with digital. What do you think that would be?
Okay. I'm so happy about the digital that I can't find the thing that I don't like in digital, because it's very, yes, probably this romantic passion for the darkroom and all the sentimental paths inside the darkroom, because at the beginning you feel depressed when you don't find the right balance with black and white, and you spend a lot of time to do the contact sheets, and you watch your clock and you say, oh no, it's I lost a lot of time, but at the end when you have the photo is absolutely perfect, and it's like a beautiful relationship. All these feelings are completely disappeared with the digital photography, because the relation with the image is very quick. You take the photo and you look at the photo immediately, and you don't have this period of waiting, you know, 1 week you go to the shop and you pay to have the photos, and then you start to look and so on.
Yeah, that's true too. The waiting, right? That made things magical in a sense. Also, you said something very interesting, because you mentioned the word artist in relation to the idea that, yes, you know, contemporary photographers who see themselves as artists are using analog photography again in a conceptual way. So I wanted to ask you, how do you see yourself? Do you see yourself as an artist or a photographer? We're getting into very... You studied philosophy as well, right? So
yeah, I studied philosophy. I can answer this question with a personal anecdote. When for example, I meet someone that doesn't belong to the field of photography, and this person asks me, what do you do in your life? If I answer, I am a photographer, probably this person will say, oh, okay, you have a shop, or you take wedding photography or something like this. This just to say that in Italy, especially in Italy, the common idea about photography is this one. But in my case, so it's very difficult for me answer this question to people that don't belong to the artistic and photographic field. But normally I consider myself an artist photographer. I take photos, but I record videos. I use other, in a small proportion, but I use drawings, I use installations. So I try to mix photography with other media. And for me, this is a very important part of my work. I don't consider myself a photographer in the sense of a person who records reality. But for me, photography is a very powerful tool to give shape to my ideas, like other artistic tool, for example, painting, sculpture, installation, and so on. So for me, photography is one of the different possibilities in art.
It's great. Yeah. In the end, I think I get a sense of where you're leaning more. That's great. So how did the interest for photography come about in your life? When did it suddenly click that the camera was your partner?
Yes, I graduated in philosophy in 2000. And during the university years, my interest in photography began. And at the beginning, I had really no idea of what photography was in general. So those first years were a kind of explorations of the different possibilities offered by this medium. And so I met a man, a photographer, that taught me the basis of photography. So literally how to use a camera, how to print in the darkroom, and so on. But at the end, I can say that I am a self-taught photographer. And when I graduated, I decided to spend some years because I didn't study at the Academy of Art. So I needed to have a lot of information about photography and art in general. So I spent a lot of time visiting exhibitions around Italy and reading books about photography and contemporary art. And so I needed to understand many things about the field of photography. And at the end of this long process, I gradually understood that photography is one of these possibilities, as I told you before. And I understood that photography is a tool. So I stopped to take normal photography or real photography, and I started to think, to create projects, write concepts, and invent a personal process, artistic process that ends with photography. Okay, so photography for me is the last step of a very long path that starts with a concept, an idea.
Yeah, and I look forward to talk more about the process and the research, because I know some of your projects, looking at them, you can see the traveling, the physical traveling, the journey behind the making of an image that looks somewhat effortless, but at the same time, it's really like the sedimentation of something much bigger.
Yeah.
Since you were talking about, you mentioned photography, as in, you know, learning photography and finding your position. I was wondering what challenges you have encountered as a female photographer, as a female artist photographer in Italy specifically. You know, I've left Italy behind, sounds very dramatic, but I left Italy in 1997 when I moved to London. And so I have kind of lived the social Italian milieu, artistic milieu from a distance. And I was wondering from within, what was your experience? Is photography fully accepted effortlessly as an art form in Italy throughout the past 20 years, let's say, since you began involved with photography? And what challenges did you face as a female artist in that field?
Okay. Yes, still now photography, yes, it's in the field of art, because for example, in Bologna Art Fair, that is a very important fair in Bologna of art, you can see a lot of photography in the same booth with other expression of art, but is always difficult to conceive, that people understand photography as art. And one of my aim is try to talk about photography. So I teach photography in the Academy of Art. I leaded for many years the conversations about photography. I invited also Marco Garofalo, and for 10 years I invited more than 40 photographers talking in front of people, trying to talk about photography. I tried to discuss the topic of contemporary photography. All these things together in order to change the rigidity of photography in Italy, okay? Mm-hmm. And I don't know if in the United States or in another part of the world you have the same problems to put in relation photography with other field of art. And as female is more difficult because, you know, photography like art is male. I published a book about this conversation about photography, and with the editor, with the publisher, we chose 9 photographers, and only one is woman, and 8 are men, okay? And this is because it's very difficult to find women professional photographers that work in photography for a long time, because usually they start to take photos, then they have a family and they stop to take photos, okay? So this is a common experience. On the next September, I will be part of an important exhibition in a museum in Italy. The title is Essere umane, being human, being female, being female, and it put together 30 photographers in the world, and I am one of the 4-5 Italians, okay? So this is, for me, it's very, very important to it's very important to change this opinion about photography, and it's important trying to do something to, you know, to move the ideas about photos in Italy? I don't know if I have answered to your
question. Yes, absolutely. And it also makes me think about the journey we have gone through with the 4 lectures that I put together on the history of Italian photography, and how hard it was at times, especially towards the end of the 19th century and the first half of the last century, to identify female photographers, not because of a matter of quality, because just of a matter of absence. They just weren't part of the involved in the field, which I think historically is a situation that applies to most of Europe and the United States. But I also have a sense that in Italy, because of our Renaissance and classical art colossal heritage, photography really suffered a lot more of this marginalization that was a little bit less pronounced in France and Britain, especially in the realm of collecting and appreciation of the object as an art object, I think. I don't think Italy had much of a problem in assimilating photography as a medium of communication, you know, like for propaganda, for news. We were on the same sort of pace with the rest of the world with that. But in terms of like considering photography a viable art form, I think we were lagging behind. And what you're describing sounds perhaps like a couple of decades behind where the United States and the UK were, but it's difficult to tell, of course. And I also love your engagement in generating possibilities for people to come and talk, to gather together and create a discussion, because that's how things change.
Yeah, and I think the new generation of young photographers are very good in this aim, because I think the female or male is not more important. They have very similar languages in photography and in art, and they are professional artists. They have studied in universities, and so they put a lot of culture inside their projects. And they work in order to change this stillness of photography. And I also work in the municipality of Ravenna, that is a very important city in Italy. And I work creating projects for young photographer, the maximum age is 35 years old. So every day I have contact with this interesting new generation, and I can test very new rules, new way to new process in the projects, and so it's very interesting from my point of view, because I am an artist, and at the same time I work in the field of photography, creating projects like this one. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I thought you were, okay, good. I was wondering too about your influences. Who sort of inspired you to develop your aesthetic language? Because I can see references with Italian photographers, but also there seems to be a more kind of like world range that might apply.
Yes, I can say that when I saw for the first time the photos taken by Diane Arbus, I was really astonished. And I was young, and I had never seen anything like this. For the first time, a photographer was showing something that was normally invisible, such as people weirdness, peculiarities, and defects. And you know that, you know my photos, and I don't have any points in common with the photos taken by Diane Arbus. But still now, when I look at a photo by Arbus, for me is always a big emotion. And only in the latest years, I realized that we have a very important thing in common, because revealing what is hidden is my aim in photography. So all my projects are about this possibility to reveal something that is not immediately clear, that is not immediately visible. So I think that is something similar in the images of Dianarpus. Other landmarks are literature, especially American literature, cinema, and first of all, real life, because many of my projects come from stories I heard, landscape I've seen, very incredible stories, and so on. Then, if you want, we can see. We can look some photos.
Yeah,
so
let's have a look.
Okay.
Everyone will enjoy some of your amazing.
I'm sorry. Okay. Oh, 1 minute, please.
Sure.
It's very difficult this evening because in Italy it's night, so. Okay, works.
Great.
Okay.
Yeah, we see it.
Okay. I start with this project, Atlas Italia. I did this project from 2013 until 2015, so 2 years, and it has been published in a book that I love, because I love this cover. You can recognize the map of Italy, and it's this work is about abandoned places and towns in Italy. So it's a very big map of abandonment in Italy. I traveled around Italy for 2 years, and the occasion of this project was a patron, a man that who bought many photos of mine, especially at the beginning of my career. And one day he came to me and told me, you have to do something great. I can help you. And he said, tell me how much money you need and I will find for you. It was very, for me, it was like a dream. I say, really? Okay. I have a big project, and this project is taking photos of abandoned place around Italy. So, you know, Italy is not so big, but it has 20 regions. So it's very, so it wasn't so simple. And so we invited 15 collectors, and we proposed them this idea, and they gave me money in exchange of a photo taken by the project. And with this money, I produced all the projects, so the many trips around Italy, and the prints and the books. So every image has a very interesting story. For example, this place is a cement boat, and it was a restaurant. It's very big, and after a few years it was abandoned, and now it is on the top of a hill in the Marche region. And when you drive in your car, you look on your left and you see this incredible monster in the landscape, you know. Where do you come from, Giovanni, in Italy?
Well, I was born in Milan, but my parents are actually from Calabria. And I
okay.
were there because you went to visit Rohudi.
I have Rogudi.
Yeah, and,
I have Rogudi in one
for
of the...
those who are just wondering what are they talking about, I guess we can look at the picture of this town, but actually they're not far away from it. I used to see it as a kid. We used to spend, there it is, it's a beautiful abandoned town in Calabria, very south of Italy, for those of you who haven't had the pleasure. And I don't know, Silvia, do you want to say a few words about this image? How did you get down there? I always had the impression that it was such a kind of forgotten corner of Italy.
Yeah, it was very difficult to reach this place because the route was very, very with a lot of problems. So I needed a lot of time to reach the place, but at the end, the vision is always amazing. And for me, it was like really like a drug, visiting all the places, like a dream. And I preferred in all these places at the end, I prefer the places that conserve the traces of their past.
Mm-hmm.
For example, I found houses that seemed just abandoned with a coffee machine on the stove and the sheets on the beds, like this one. I spent a lot of time searching on the web all these places, and then I called people who lived in the specific regions to understand if the place is, if it was possible to take photos of the place, or there was restrictions and something like this. So it was very complicated to organize all these trips. This is a fake castle in Piemonte region. It's the reproduction of an ancient castle. This castle was built in at the beginning of 20th century, and it was abandoned, and you can go inside and stay in the castle all the time you want because it's empty and it's open. This is Italy. A very important part of this project was dedicated to Pianosa Island. It's an island close to Tuscany, and I had a commission by the Festival of European Photography in Reggio Emilia. So I had the permission to go inside the prison, because in the center of this small island there is a big prison, a maximum security prison that was closed in 1990, and I had the opportunity to be the first photographer allowed to take photos inside this prison. And for me it was a big emotion because I found really beautiful places. This is the village close to the prison, and this is the interior of an house. This is absolutely my favorite photo, and this is the kitchen of the prison, and I like the colors and the composition. I didn't touch the objects. I found everything in this position, and I like this photo because it reminds me a painting by Giorgio Morandi. So this is another famous place in Italy, is the abandoned factory of airplanes of the fascist period. It is in Predappio, that is the town where Mussolini was born. And so this is another place. I love this wall that is very similar to a painting.
I have a curiosity about, yeah. Then we might maybe talk a little bit more about Rahudi. I have a curiosity about the meaning of this project. And I'm just going to ask you a question in the context of the journey of our lectures. And let's say the problem Italy faced during the 19th century, especially with landscape. And again, the classical heritage, the romanticized way of representing Italy as a country in ruins. But of course, those were the ruins of the Colosseum and whatever remains of the Roman empires or the Renaissance that were left behind. And what does it mean for you to assemble an atlas of more modern / contemporary ruins in the context of that tradition?
I thank you for this very interesting question. I didn't think really about this relationship, but I know that there is a relation between the modern abandoned places and the ruins, very famous in Italy. I think this is a B-side of Italy, because only few people know all these places, and my book had a lot of success in Italy, not only in the field of photography, but especially in for people that wanted to know these places. So I think in Italy there is a very an old interest for ruins and abandoned, probably because of the past, because we have in our DNA this this heritage, as you told me before. So I tried to take photos of places well conserved that had memories of their past. And this for me was very important, because I wasn't interested in many places that I visited. So I visited a lot of places, but at the end I took photographs only of few places, because I wanted to talk about memories in Italy, okay, of the past. And the reason of abandonment are various. For example, earthquakes, or people abandoned some towns because they were in a bad position. So new towns were built in a different position, easier to reach by car. So the very interesting thing about this project was that every little place has an incredible story that can be told. And I would like to write this story. I started a collaboration with the magazine Art Tribune, that is a very important Italian art magazine. And I'm every 2 weeks I write an article in which I talk about my experience about these places. So I I remind all what happened in many of this situation. I don't know if I have answered to your question.
Yeah, absolutely. It's fantastic. I'll look it up. I didn't know about that. That's a great idea to kind of bring the photographs to life even more. I also have a question about beauty, because clearly your work is so poetically drenched and yet balanced. There's a sense of balance and calm and serenity. Even when melancholia is involved, there is a quality that I think runs through your body of work, which I find really interesting. I think that usually is the pedigree of a very interesting and mature artist, when you can sort of recognize them across the board of their works.
Yeah, beauty for me is a detail, is something relative. There is a very funny anecdote by Letizia Battaglia. She is a very important Italian reporter. And she said, some people look at a photo of a beautiful girl and say, look, what a beautiful photo. You know, so it's very subtle, but it's a way to exchange the beauty of the subject with the beauty of the photo. This is a typical mistake in photography. So for me, beauty is a detail that comes from the idea, the concept. So obviously I pay attention to the composition, to the colors, to the mix of color. I use always the same colors, and I have always the same kind of composition. I'm very simple in my composition, so I have created my concept of beauty. But the concept of beauty is a consequence of the process we talked about before. So the process starts with an idea, and it finishes with the photo, and the photo must have an idea of beauty, okay? But it's a part of the whole complexity of the image.
I find that notion as well, you just talked about the idea of the color scheme and the palette of the work,
yeah.
Constant, which almost speaks of a painterly quality in your photography, like if you were more of a painter in a way,
Yeah.
rather than a photographer. It's really interesting.
Yes, for the series dedicated to the abandoned places, I created a group of photos printed in black and white and hand colored, because for the reason you say, because I wanted to put photography in relation with painting, and so and it was a very interesting different relation with photography, because I spent a lot of time looking at the picture, trying to find the right colors. So it was similar to come back to the age of the darkroom for the long time dedicated to a single picture.
Yeah. And you want to tell us about Domestica as one of your most recent works,
yeah.
based on the pandemic.
Yeah, during the pandemic, I created 2 projects. The first one is Domestica. The title is very simple. And during the month inside the house with my daughters, I have 2 daughters, 4 years old and 6 years old. And we spend a lot of time together in the house, inside the house and in the garden. So I decided, as an artistic rule, self-imposed rule to survive during this difficult months, to take a good photo every day, a good professional photo, not taken with the phone, but with professional camera, tripod and lights and so on. Every day a photo of the house, of the games, of the garden, of the daughters and so on. And at the end, I put together 30 photos, and I called an editor, and he was really, really happy to publish the book. In the book, there are the photos and a diary that I wrote every night after the photo, in which I tell my feelings about that period. I never mention pandemic, but all the text talks about pandemic, about the situation in general. And in this text, I explain every photo that was born like a game with my daughters. And I will, in that exhibition, I mentioned before, in about 30 female photographers, I will exhibit this, the installation with all the 30 photographs.
That's so interesting. It's kind of contained series about a snapshot of that moment, right?
Yeah, yeah. And during the same time, I received a commission by the Italian government. They invited 8 photographers to take photos of the places, places of culture, places of nature. We were very free to choose the places we preferred, and I decided to choose the places of my childhood. For example, the sea and the hills, the mountains close to where I live, so in my region, that is Emilia Romagna. And this is my favorite photo of this project, because it's the sea, the free beach in Cervia, and usually is a very, very crowded place. And you can see the waves of the made by the wind,
Yeah.
on the sand, like, you know, American desert. And it's a vision absolutely unusual, because, you know, it was May, and the sea was really crowded. This is another small town, and I like, it was very, very painful to see the cities and the place completely empty, but at the same time I found a similarity with the photos of Atlas Italia, because the idea of abandoned place.
Absolutely. I also see a little bit of Fellini's Amarcord,
Yeah,
maybe a sprinkle of Luigi Ghirri. Ghirri loved these strange places without people that made the scene look a little bit surreal, perhaps.
Yes, there is a very serious illness in that have many Italian photographers, and the name is Ghirrite. That it's very difficult to forget Luigi Ghirri, because he's a very important master in landscape photography in Italy. So especially it was from Emilia, so we have the same landscapes.
I didn't know about Ghirrite, so I'm really, I think I have it too. Now I know what my condition is, because I'm a big fan.
And this is a new project started in 2017, stopped for many reasons, and now I started again last week. It's again another tour around Italy, region by region. In this case, the goal is find places, unusual places, not abandoned, but strange, unusual, emotional, but not so known by all the people. So it's another kind of map. For example, this is a mysteric pyramid in a garden in the center of Italy. This is Orvieto is a pozzo, is well, no, is well, okay. Yeah. It's a very ancient well. This is a very famous church, San Galgano, without the roof. And so I want, again, put together landscapes, natural beauties, architectures, and different places that can live together on the same tag, that is unusual, that is emotional, and absolutely important. Okay, this is a very famous library in Cesena. This is another project I did last year, and this project comes from a very strange story in the north of Italy. There is a small town called Viganella. In this town, for 3 months every year, the sun doesn't come because there is a mountain that blocks the sun. Okay, so the mayor some years ago put a big mirror in the top of the mountain, and the mirror reflect the sunlights in the small town. So this is an image of the center of the small village of the reflected sun, and this is the mirror. This mirror moves following the movement of the sun. You know, this is a very, very strange story, because you know, it was like a dream that becomes reality. Okay.
Yes, again, I think it has a strange sort of Fellinian quality, like the artifice that makes up for nature not being. I'm thinking again of the snow in Amarcord and all these artificial devices that implement nature. It's really fascinating. I never heard about this.
Yeah, it's very.
You're making us discover Italy even more.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And this is another Italian story. This is an archive photo of a town called Fabbriche di Caregine in Tuscany. This town is at the moment under 80 meters of water, and in 1994 the lake was emptied, and people went in Tuscany to visit this place, and you can see that it seems like a cardboard town. And now, you know, it's impossible to visit the town. So I recreated the town house by house using plaster, and I took photo of the model, of the scale model, like if it was real. Okay. And the curious, very strange thing is when you search on the web Fabbriche di Caregine, you find photos like this and photo like my photos mixed together. So reality and
yeah, very confusing, I guess, in a good way.
Yeah.
What's interesting too is that the more you talk about your work, yeah, that is already very ambiguous, right?
Yeah, it's ambiguous.
The more we hear you talk about your work, the more you're mentioning literature, then we see a sculptural participation. So you're really shedding light on what you mentioned at the beginning with this notion of installation and how photography becomes the end result of a process or a journey.
Yeah.
It's really interesting.
Yes, I have many diaries full of projects, of a process, and for me it's very important to work in this way. Otherwise I don't feel to be an artist. This is an installation view of my last exhibition, and this is the project mentioned before by the director, the project about Dante that won an important prize in Italy, Cantica21, and this is the installation view because I finished the project 20 days ago, and now it's inside a museum in Milan. The project talks about the Divine Comedy through the text of the philosopher René Guénon, the French philosopher, that find in the Divine Comedy 6 numbers. And I worked about these 6 numbers, try to represent them through photography. It was a very complicated work because it's about the mystery of this important poem. And I decided at the end to do this big installation of 22 pieces and put together different languages. So you can see drawings, you can see archive photographer and some black and white photographer and colored and normal photography. So this is the last project.
Great. Now, as time is running out, and I want to give our audience an opportunity to ask questions, but I still have one for you. So we've been talking about Irrite, which is going to become my obsession now for...
What is your pet obsession?
Irrite.
Ah, Girrito, okay.
I was wondering, of course, there's a lot of landscape in your work, and I was wondering about the relationship between landscape, nature, and the changing landscape in Italy. It's like, what role does it play in your work?
You are your questions are really interesting. Yes, I'm always traveling around Italy because I'm really interested in changing. So with my photography, I try to document and at the same time to talk in an artistic way, so far from document, talk about the changing in the landscape. For example, in visiting abandoned places, if you go 2 times in the same place, for example, at the beginning of the year and at the end of the year, you can see 2 different places, because in the meanwhile, this place has collapsed or has been bought by a rich American that created a new town or a new hotel. And so I like to see or to come back in the same places many times during the years, during the time. So and it's my habit to do this just for that reason, because I like to see what is changing in the time when in the time that I don't see the place. I don't know if it's clear, but I really like with photography to check this what is happened to the landscape,
the process and the change.
Yeah.
I wonder if we have any questions from our viewers.
Actually, the Essere Umane project aroused some interest among our attendees. So I already sent some of the information I could find online about it to the people who are curious about it and interested in it. So I would like to ask you about this. If you took specific pictures for the exhibition, if you selected some picture from your archives, and how and what kind of pictures you selected for this specific project?
Yeah, because of the exhibition was scheduled for the last year, and at the beginning with the curator of the exhibition, we chose the 4 photos from the project Atlas Italia, but they obviously the exhibition was cancelled, and so during this year I created 2 new projects, and the curator decided to choose the project about the lockdown made inside my house with my daughters, and so I will exhibit 30 photos in an installation like this one, because this is my new way to exhibit the new projects. I like to put together different images, try to put in relation different kind of colors, different composition, and create a new way to look at the photos, look at the picture.
Curators will not be happy about it.
Yeah.
No, thank you. It's very interesting, and I think time is running up, so I would like to thank Silvia for giving this, opening this window on her work. It's been very enlightening, I would say, to learn how you work on the process to create a photo, and what do you see and how you put the things together to create the new reality that we enjoy through your pictures.
Thank you.
As I briefly mentioned before, I hope this conversation will be able to continue this conversation, hopefully in the fall, if not next year, in person in Chicago, and maybe with Cantica 2021, which we'll be very happy to host. And otherwise, I would already like to invite you to our Ghirite Festival because we are all under the spell of Ghirri. So we have already decided with Giovanni to remember Ghirri next year on the anniversary of his 30th anniversary. So next February.
Yeah.
And then I would like also to thank Giovanni for having led and walked us through the history of Italian photography throughout the last 6 months, and for having this very interesting and beautiful conversation that closes our program for this year. And I would also like to thank everyone who has followed us in this path, in this journey through photography.
Thank you so much, Luca. Thank you so much, Silvia. It's been a great pleasure to meet you, and hopefully in person soon, and everybody else.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So thank you all again, and we'll wait for you all for our future programs dedicated to contemporary arts. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.